Teachers were, in the early 20th century and the last few decades of the 19th, almost everywhere, missionary teachers. So it's obvious, if you know the history of Unalaska, the teachers who came here were Methodists because the Aleutian Islands were awarded.
I came to Alaska without any preparation for a multicultural society, and came to realize that what I saw and what my students saw weren't the same realities. I called an animal a living thing of inferior sensitivity and intelligence. They viewed animals as living things of superior intelligence and sensitivity. We were talking the same language but understanding things differently. And so the longer I stayed here, the more I came to realize that my students didn't see things, didn't see the world the same way I did. And that got me interested. But more than that, I came to realize that other people coming into the state from anywhere else were likely to make the same misjudgments or miscommunicate in the same way I had. So I began rather informally to orient newcomers so they could avoid making the mistakes I'd been making for the last 10 years or so, and eventually got hired by the university to do training in that field, and I've been doing it now for over 25 years. Well, the biggest and most important aspect of this is that when miscommunication happens, whoever has less power pays for it. So people with power who have to make decisions about other people's truthfulness or competence or honesty or talent need to be aware that if something goes wrong, if the conversation doesn't go smoothly, if there are any glitches in the miscommunication, because they have more power, they have to be more sensitive to that. The person with less power has very little they can do to fix things. And whoever has less power will suffer the consequences of miscommunication. A student miscommunicating with a teacher will get a lower grade. A patient miscommunicating with a doctor will get, less adequate health care. A job applicant not communicating well with the person interviewing them probably won't get the job. A defendant in court miscommunicating with the judge probably will get a longer sentence. Whoever has less power suffers the consequences. So people with more power have to learn to be sensitive to where communication breaks down so they don't wind up penalizing someone for being of a different culture and communicating in a different way. So the first level is expect miscommunication to happen, and when it first occurs, chalk it up to miscommunication, not to deliberate insubordination or rudeness or defiance. If it happens periodically, then you have to point to the behavior specifically. For example, I feel like you're being rude when you use that high pitch or that tone of voice. And sometimes someone's using that tone of voice not even realizing it sounds rude to someone from another culture. So the first rule is give people the benefit of a doubt, and then if it becomes a behavior that's rather pronounced and still makes you uncomfortable, put it on the table, talk about it. I feel threatened when you stand that close or talk that loud. And then finally, when we realize we've misunderstood each other, somebody should say, "Forgive me," which says, "I realize there's been a miscommunication, now let's fix it," and not be angry. These are just survival skills we need to develop in a multicultural society. Well, I think Unalaska is a completely unique community. There's no place like it in the world. The first time I got here, I remember being so excited because so many incredibly important, probably some of the great geniuses in the history of Alaska lived here and worked here for decades at a time. But over 100 years ago, actually closer now to 2 centuries ago. So my big push, so to speak, here in Unalaska has always been, do you realize what a unique community this is? Do you realize John Veniaminoff, one of the great geniuses of Alaska history, lived here for 10 years in the 1820s, that the first schools in Alaska were here in Unalaska, that some of the greatest art in Alaska, historical art and religious art, is here at the cathedral. And a lot of people take pictures of the outside but never go inside to realize how much Aleut history and Aleut art there is uniquely at Unalaska. So I was coming here to try to tell people, you're so lucky to be living in such a wonderful place, unique.